All right. Well, Andrew Cuomo, the New York governor, was busy writing a book talking about how awesome he was while his state suffered through a pandemic, largely because of his own policies. Now, according to the tax returns that he himself filed, we know that he is cashing in big time on that controversial memoir. He's making upwards of, sit down, $5 million, despite selling less than 50,000 copies of the book. So let's bring in our company to weigh in. Host of the Grace Curley Show, Grace Curley, and host of the Larry O'Connor Show, Larry O'Connor. Guys, good to see you.
Hey, Sean.
All right, before we get into the Andrew Cuomo stuff, because I want to touch on that, a big congratulations to Larry. It was just announced today that he is going to return to his roots and lead the morning show on WMAL. Congratulations.
Thank you. We're calling
Larry,
the show O'Connor and Company, so consider it an homage.
I was going to say, it was called Mornings on the Mall. It has a new name. Sounds a bit familiar. What's it called, Larry?
You know, we should swap up. You should host O'Connor and Company, and I'll host Spicer and Company. Now, that'd be fantastic.
Listen. All right. Well, let's get on to
think about it.
Cuomo, who doesn't maybe have to work anymore because he made so much money. He's cashing in on this whole pandemic. It didn't turn out so good. Larry, he hasn't announced officially that he's running for a fourth term, but it's widely believed that he's going to. I mean, how much do you think this is going to play out in his thinking about whether to run for a fourth term?
He's done. Democrats have to step in here and stop the hemorrhaging. They might let him play out this term, Sean, but there's no possible way that they'll let the voters decide one more time. In fact, he's probably going to be challenged from the left. Maybe AOC will decide to be a governor. But this is just one mess after another. Do you know his book sold 45,000 copies? Let me put that in perspective. Omarosa sold twice as many books. That tells you something.
Yeah, well, Sean and I were talking about this earlier, and Sean knows because he's written several books, but he was saying $5 million means that he should have sold roughly around 1 million copies. And as you mentioned, he sells under 50,000 books. But Grace,
disaster.
The crazy thing, he did donate some of it, around a third. Some of the money's still coming in. He's supposed to get $2 million over the next 2 years in addition. But he is giving this money, the rest of it, to his daughters. But considering that he wrote this during a pandemic where he was governor, about his job as governor, and used the resources, including his staff, to write the book, this feels like a state-funded book. So, I mean, should he be getting any of the money, or should it be going to the state?
It should be going to the victims of the nursing homes that he grossly mishandled. And I want to say there is one real silver lining to the fact that this man is such a narcissist that he would write this book while he's mishandling this whole catastrophe. And that is that if you actually read the book, which obviously nobody did because it only sold 46,000 copies, but some journalists are actually looking at the book now, and it does kind of give you a timeline of his corruption, and it really could be his undoing, and the fact that he won't stop talking during all of these pressers. Great. But I do think that is a little nugget of positivity, is that he's kind of writing exactly what he did and how corrupt he was during this entire thing. So that's a positive spin.
That is terrific. They should rename the book Exhibit A.
Yeah.
But Larry, Lindsay brings up a good point. He gets $5 million, right? And he is governor, right? So I get it. He can walk and chew gum at the same time. But he's dealing with a pandemic while he's serving as governor, writing about being governor. And then he's using state resources. We know from reports that computers and printers were used. We know also from reports that staff was being used. This is, as Lindsay put it, a state book. It's not a Cuomo book. And I think, it's one thing to write it, which, off to the side. But from all the reports, it was state resources that put this together.
Yeah, it's such a scandal, Sean. And, we often talk about the bias in media and the bias in pop culture. It does permeate especially to the publishing industry. These are elites in Midtown Manhattan who decided they wanted to let him do a victory lap in the middle of the pandemic while we knew that seniors had died because of his decisions. Honestly, I'm with Janice Dean on this one as well. She thinks the son of Sam law should come into play here. He shouldn't be able to get one dime because he's really making money off of his, I believe, crimes. This was criminal what happened to these poor innocent people.
Yeah, I mean, Grace, to think that this book was written by somebody who also, people who wrote it and his staff said that they volunteered, but they didn't feel like they could say no. And, all this scandal of him and his sexual allegations, you just think maybe it wasn't sexual allegations for some of these people who wrote the book, but the fact that they felt forced to help him is another issue in and of itself.
Yeah.
Well, absolutely. I mean, everything we've learned over the past couple months is that he's a bully. He's calling people up at night telling them, and I'm paraphrasing here, but along the lines of, I'm going to destroy you. So imagine if you told him you didn't want to edit his first draft, what he would do. I mean, I wouldn't be like, oh, no, I'm not going to help you with that. But then to your point, it's ridiculous to think these people are doing it out of the goodness of their hearts. Like, I know that when I'm off the clock, I'm off the clock. I'm not saying to someone, oh, yeah, send it over. Let me do that. As I eat my dinner, let me edit your book. It's absolutely absurd.
Well, I think the other thing, Grace, is that it's the media coverage of all of the subjects that the four of us have raised have gone swept under the rug. That if this had been a Republican, if this had been a Trump, we would be hearing about it every day.
Forget about it.
Yeah, they only went in on this because they saw that they could cast him aside. They saw that Biden was in the White House. It was time. Keep in mind, I was thinking about this today. He was floated at one point to be Attorney General, and I was talking about that, and then I realized, wait a second. He at one point was floated to be the president. They all wanted him to be president. They thought like he was out there with his bomber jacket on and he's, the love gov, America's boyfriend. How the tables have turned. And only now are they doing this because they know it's convenient for them and it's safe. That's why the mainstream media is speaking up.
Called the gold standard by, I believe, Biden himself for being a governor.
Oh, yeah.
And
Larry?
Fauci. Yeah, Fauci praised him
Wow.
for his handling of the pandemic. It's despicable. I gotta think even in New York, people have reached the end of this whole Cuomo saga here.
Yeah.
Grace is right. He's an absolute bully, and he's embarrassing the great state of New York. It's time for a change. If he doesn't have the good grace and dignity to step down, which clearly he doesn't, Democrats need to step in here and say, Mr. Cuomo, it's time to go.
I think they probably will. Anyway, thank you both for joining us. Larry O'Connor of O'Connor and Company.
Sounds good.
Congratulations on the new show.
Thanks, Sean.